Have to start with some technical difficulties, right? So everybody's here for Can You Patch Cloud, right? Yay, nay? Hey, you guys look like you're about as awake as I am. So this is going to be a slight rant talk. The reason that I wrote this was a conversation that I had here last year. So I had a conversation with a security vendor. We'll go through a little bit of things here. To give you an about me, for those of you that don't know me, my name is SecureJulio, and could you please stop talking because I can hear you up here. Thank you. I can be a jerk sometimes too. So anyone that doesn't know me, I'm SecureJulio on Twitter, SecureJulio.com, SecureJulio at Gmail, anything like that. I've been an IT professional since '98, doing security since 2006. Been around the industry a little bit. I've done AppSec now. I've done VM in the past. I've always been a fixer, basically, so I've always stayed blue team. That's kind of where this talk came out of. A lot of, how many people like to fix things? Blue teams? Cool, mostly blue team in here. Awesome. So vulnerability management is a big blue team side of things. It's the ones that are trying to protect the assets from getting hacked by the red team or the pen testers or the bad guys or whoever. I work as application security now, which is kind of a little bit like vulnerability management. You still do the scanning, you still do the remediation on vulnerabilities, things like that. But this talk is focused solely on the vulnerability management for platforms and things like that. I can't say who I work for. I have to go through legal and through a whole bunch of other rigmarole just to say, hey, this is the company I work for. If you really want to know, talk to me later, I'll tell you. So can somebody tell me what the cloud is? Good answer. Actually, that's what it is. There is no cloud. Everybody, oh, I'm in the cloud, we're moving to the cloud, blah, blah, blah. It's another server. It's another rack of machines somewhere. You just don't own it. You rent time on it. You're basically looking to expand what you're able to do with hardware you don't own. So there really is no cloud that everybody, you got Microsoft's, oh, to the cloud. It's just their own server center is basically what it is. So this talk started out as a rant from last year. While I was walking the floor in the vendor area last year, I started speaking to a security vendor that I personally use. I'm like, hey, what do you guys do for vulnerability management? We don't. Wait, what? What do you mean you don't? Oh yeah, we don't do vulnerability management. We're in the cloud, we're fine. Okay, I just had an aneurysm. That doesn't mean what you think it means. And they're like, oh, no, Amazon handles everything for us. We start a server up, we use everything from them. Okay. Just because you say you're in the cloud doesn't mean that they take care of everything. I don't know if this person was a salesperson. I don't know if they were in marketing. I don't know if they were the VP of I don't know shit about shit. They didn't know what was going on, basically. I talked to a number of other people that I knew that worked for that company. They did vulnerability management. They actually had a process. They had tools. They had scanners. The person I was talking to, thankfully, was just not informed, which was great. But it gave me an idea of a lot of people do think, you know what, just because I'm in the cloud, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about it. Somebody else is taking care of it for me. So let's do a little bit of background. So what is vulnerability management? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Not enough coffee at this conference, apparently. So vulnerability management is basically a process by which you identify or discover, evaluate, mediate, or accept vulnerabilities in your environment. It can be operating systems, platforms, applications, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter where it's located. If it's a vulnerability, it's technically within vulnerability management. So your application security people do it. Your security operations team does it. Same idea, just a different way of looking at it. You still have scanners. You still should be doing penetration tests. Still should be doing, policy compliance even, which a lot of people don't think about as part of vulnerability management, but it is. When a lot of people think about vulnerability management, they think patches, right? Microsoft, Patch Tuesday, Adobe, Java, that type of thing, right? Patch management isn't all that there is to vulnerability management, and especially not when you move to the cloud. Also, Patch Tuesday doesn't exist anymore because Microsoft's just releasing patches whenever they, are available now. Unfortunately, most of the time, it's a lot of patches. You're looking at, not only your platform OS, but you're looking at any middleware you've installed. You're looking at your applications that you run. If they're vendor supplied, great, you can get patches from the vendor. If they're not, then you're looking to create your own. Most of the time, companies are going to have more than what they can handle. So they're going to have to hire somebody just to do vulnerability management. People are going to forget about configuration management. That's another part of vulnerability management. So if you've got, open ports or default usernames and passwords, services that you don't use that are still turned on, all kinds of things that, technically you should be hardening your systems. It's still a vulnerability if it can be used. So what if you can't fix it? You can't put a patch on it. You can't do a configuration change to make it go away. Can you mitigate it somehow, some other way? Can you put a firewall in front of it? Are you looking at, a layer 7 application firewall? Maybe it's even AV. But you want to reduce the attack surface, basically. Only the machines that need to be there are what you should be running. So if you can't mitigate it, you're looking at risk acceptance. This is all still part of vulnerability management. A lot of people don't think about these steps, though. They think vulnerability management, they think patching. I had a person that I used to train at my now old and / new company. When he first started vulnerability management, that's all he cared about. Oh, I'm going to go patch all the 10s for Microsoft. Okay, and? Well, that's what I'm going to work on. Why? Well, that's what vulnerability management is. So, getting that message out to people to say it's not just patching brings them to the point where they start looking at configuration changes. They start looking at mitigations. They start looking at risk management. Your risk acceptance process is something that needs to be there. You're going to run into something, be it on-prem or be it in the cloud. You're not going to be able to fix it. You're going to need to have some plan in place, some process by which you can accept that risk at the correct level. You can't have your server team say, oh yeah, we accept that risk because we can't fix it, it'll break application, whatever. That may be a valid argument. It may be, yeah, your application will break if you put this patch out. But there needs to be a process in place that the correct acceptance level reviews it and signs off on it. That person usually can't accept risk for the company, so it needs to have a process in place, usually with a risk management team, things like that, to help that out. So when you move to the cloud, what changes in VM? Basically, yeah, nothing really changes. You're changing your data center. You're changing where you're actually running your systems. You're changing what you need to patch, things like that. So when I started looking at the cloud, I really didn't know a whole lot about it. I heard a lot of people, oh, it's like a mainframe. You rent time on it. You tell them, hey, I want to rent X amount of time on the mainframe, on the cloud or on whatever the system it is. It's just like the mainframe. Cloud is definitely not the mainframe. As a side note, the tape drives up here, my dad worked on. He used to fix those for IBM. So I've been in computers way too long. The mainframe is still on-prem. You still have complete control of that mainframe. You may rent it from someplace, but it's on your site. You do everything you need to right there. Going back to it, the cloud is not a mainframe. I mean, you still have things that you need to do to the cloud, but you won't have it on-prem. You're going to have it in somebody else's data center. The cloud is expansion and contraction when you need it. You may have some project comes up and says, hey, you know what? I need 100 servers for this application. Okay, great. So you call up Amazon, you call up Azure, whoever it may be. We want 100 servers, let's get an account set up, blah, blah, blah. So you start rolling through it, you get all your servers out there. Okay, now what? Once you get to that, you get your compute power out there, who's paying attention to the risk? Just because you have servers that you need now, somebody may sign off on the budget. Oh yeah, great, you're going to put it out in the cloud, it's going to cost us $100,000 a year. Okay, somebody's got to sign off on that cost. Makes sense. Who signs off on the risk? Who's evaluating what you're running out there? Who's looking at the images that you put out there? Where are you getting the images from? Is it your corporate standard? Nobody really thinks about that. Also, does it matter if it's just an hour or two? Some people may say, oh, we use the cloud for testing something on a short-term basis. Well, we only spin up a server for a couple days. Maybe it's an hour. Maybe it's 2 hours. Anybody heard of ZMAP? That can scan the entire internet in less than an hour. So the short time frame doesn't really hold water either. You're still going to have people looking at your server as soon as it comes up. So you have to make sure that you're looking at the risk to that environment when you spin it up. So can you make someone else worry about the problems? When you guys are, looking at moving to the cloud or looking at doing vulnerability management in the cloud, do you have to be the one to actually do the risk management? Like the person who, was misinformed, does Amazon or does Azure take all the responsibility on themselves? Do they do the patching? Do they do the configuration management? Are you even reviewing what they do? A lot of people aren't even going to look at it. They're just going to say, oh, so-and-so handles it, we don't care. Once you get a little bit farther along in vulnerability management, you might start doing vendor risk analysis, where you might start asking them, hey, what do you guys do? Do you scan your systems? Where do you get the images from? Who signs off that this is a hardened configuration? If you don't have that, you need to get to that point. Maybe you're, doing like an as a service. Everybody's heard of as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. It's a pretty easy way of looking at how your cloud vendor works. So you can start out, you have your, packaged software is your on-prem. You handle everything. You buy the hardware, you provide the electricity, you buy the, or license the software. If it goes down, it's your baby. You have to deal with all of it. When you go to infrastructure as a service, they handle the virtualization, the servers, the networking in that, and then you put whatever OS you want on it, and you build it from there. There's a certain cutoff point for each one of where that company is responsible and where you are responsible. As you go to your platform as a service, they may give you the OS. A lot of people think platform as a service is the cloud, because that's what EC2 is. That's what your Azure usually is. If you're running a VM in the cloud, it's platform as a service. They're giving you the OS and you do with it what you want at that point. If you go all the way to software as a service, you end up with, we own everything, we do everything, you have either a web portal or an API, we'll handle all the rest of it. That's usually where people are thinking that they're getting for the other levels. They're thinking all the patching is being done, all the configurations are being done on the other levels, and they're not. So, anybody follow Twitter at all? 3 people? Really? Yeah, maybe. A little bit. So, about a year ago, there was what I thought was a pretty good analogy for your cloud infrastructure through pizza. And it actually came up pretty good. You start out with your homemade pizza, or your on-prem. You do everything for this. You buy the material, you put it together, you cook it, you have the table to eat it with, you have the utensils, you have to clean up after you're done. It's all you. That's what your on-prem services are. You're required to do all your discovery from a VM perspective on your own. If you look at your infrastructure as a service, this is just the hardware. So you're renting the processing power and the networking in that, but you have to put your own operating system on it. In our pizza correlation, this is the frozen pizza. You go out and you buy the pizza. They put the ingredients together and everything, but you have to take it home. You have to cook it. You have to, have a place to eat it, clean up after it, things like that. Chris walked away. I was going to ask him for water. If you go to a platform as a service, this is a little bit different. This is what a lot of people think of on the cloud, because this is what Amazon and EC2 do. They're going to look at having they'll provide you the operating system. They'll provide you, if you want a database server, they'll give that to you, but they won't have any sort of, skin in the game from a VM perspective. It's not going to be we'll take care of it up to this point, since you're putting, thanks, Will. Since you're putting the applications in that on this one, you're responsible from that point up. You've got the hardware, they're providing the hardware and the operating system. you're looking at, your, let's say a web server or something like that, you still need to worry about patching. You still need to worry about hardening. And like I said, for the pizza discovery or discussion, this would be your delivery service. They're going to provide everything except the place to eat it. And finally, you get to your software as a service. That's your, I'm going to go to Giordano's. Some people might go to Gino's East. I'm a Chicago person, so. But they provide everything. All the power, the hardware, the software, everything top to bottom. You just connect to it, or in this case, eat it, and then pay for that service. So if you have more servers from a cloud perspective, you're going to have more attack surface, right? Everybody remember having castles back in the day, you had a moat around it, right? What does that correlate to nowadays? Thank you. Coffee, guys, you need to be awake. So in our castle, you had everything behind the castle walls. You had, your treasure, your princess you locked in the tower, whatever it is. Whatever you're trying to protect was always in the castle. You built a wall, you put a moat around it, you put some alligators in the moat, whatever it was. Unfortunately, obviously, we use more than firewalls nowadays. This is not hardening your systems now. This is not patching your systems. You can't just have the perimeter anymore. It doesn't exist. So you're going to have to try and figure out where the vulnerabilities are in your new castle, because most of the time your firewall is going to look something like this. This is actually a section of the Great Wall of China. Most people don't think about that. They see the Great Wall of China, oh, I walked it from X point to X point. Right, but some of it looks like that because it was hundreds of miles long. You can't keep up the whole thing. You're going to have breaches in your defenses at some point, and you have to account for them. So once you do move to the cloud, does that make you a bigger target? When you're looking at your vulnerability management program, are you taking into account that you're now out there on the internet? You're now a bigger target because you have more servers. You do business in the internet. If you have a brick and mortar business and the only thing you have out there is an informational website, chances are you probably don't have as big a target on your back as somebody like an Amazon or eBay or somebody like that that's got thousands and thousands of servers and millions of customers. They're going to have a lot harder time than someone who's a mom and pop shop that has an informational website with nothing on it. And just as an aside on this one, does anybody remember the RSA breach a couple of years ago with the tokens and everything, the security tokens? That was supposedly through a third party. That's how they got those tokens. So just because you don't do XYZ doesn't mean that they aren't going to target you for something. They may use you as a pivot point for something else. So if you have more systems, that means you have more vulnerabilities, right? If you have 10 servers that have 10 vulnerabilities, they're all the same vulnerabilities. You expand that to 1,000 servers, probably now have 10,000 vulnerabilities because it's the same image. Same patching program, same everything. Even if you're running an as a service, you're still going to have more servers. Your software as a service is the only one that's going to have we'll take care of everything until your front-end web portal. And like I said, you're still going to want to do your vendor risk analysis to make sure that they're doing their due diligence. You may have some of your transferred risk at that point, but it's still, your customers are still going to be mad at you if you lose your data, if you lose their data. So having more systems and having more vulnerabilities means you're going to have more configurations, more patches to apply, more scans to do. Everything you would do for your on-prem is just, extrapolated to a different network center now. So do you have the time, money, and resources to tackle them all? Most people are going to move to the cloud just like they do with their technical debt now. Oh, we'll fix it down the road. Most people aren't going to take a look at, hey, if we do this, that means we have to have more systems admins. That means we have to have more security people. That means we have to have more, down the line of every different job that handles one server on-prem is just going to be the same thing for the cloud. You may have somebody that handles the network side for Amazon or Azure or something like that, but it's not going to be, oh, well, we can move to the cloud and it's going to be so much easier. And I hear that time and time again, that it's always going to be easier using the cloud. Oh, we don't have to worry about it because they'll spin up a server for us. Once you do decide to move to the cloud and you say, hey, I'm going to do VM in the cloud, we do it on-prem, we're good at this, this is awesome. Did you remediate all the vulnerabilities? I mean, if you look at the checkboxes, there's looks like somebody missed one. Anybody have any idea what that could be? What's that? Thank you. Somebody is awake this morning. A lot of people don't look at the framework. They don't think about it. It's like, oh, well, yeah, we're running hypervisors and, it's fine. We'll patch all the systems inside of it. VMware has vulnerabilities as well. Doesn't mean that it's, RCEs or, the ability to own it, right off the bat, but doesn't mean that it's not going to provide information to attack something else. A lot of people do not look at their hypervisors. They look at, oh, well, our server here is the most important, so we're going to scan that and that's it. They really don't think about they don't holistically think about the vulnerability management program. So whose responsibility is it to resolve? So if you find a vulnerability, whose job is it to fix it? Okay. So let's say you find it in a server on your cloud. Whose responsibility is to fix it? The correct answer is to look at your contract. Because unfortunately, that's what it boils down to. When you make a contract with a company and they say, hey, we're going to provide you this service, that contract should spell out what they're responsible for. It is, absolutely. You're still looking to them to do their vendor, where the vendor risk analysis comes in. You're still looking to them to do their job, but there's a line where you have to make sure that they do their job or it's your job to do it. And you have to know where that line is. You ask a lot of people that are in the cloud, they don't have a clue. And it's sad, honestly. But it's not really surprising because a lot of people do the same thing on-prem. You find a vulnerability on a Windows server. How many people have had the conversation with Windows saying, oh, no, that's middleware. Middleware saying, nope, it's a Windows server. That's not mine. It happens. So what do? I had to get one meme in there. You still want to do your vulnerability management process. You still want to scan things. You still want to look at what's out there, what the configurations are, what patches are missing, what 0 days are identified. It's still the same process. What you may want to start thinking about in the cloud versus on-prem, though, a lot of your cloud providers, one, are going to ask you, when do you want to scan? If you want to scan for a VM scan, you need to tell them when you're going to scan because they see it as an attack. They're going to need to know to suppress that in their SOC. Some of them do set up authorized scanners, though. Qualys being one of them, I believe Nessus does as well. You will have some that you can set up a scanner in their environment and run it whenever you want, provided you run it with the settings that they tell you to run it with. The drawback to that is it runs as a VM in your cloud instance, so you're still paying for it. You're paying for the license for the scanner, you're paying for the time on the cloud. So that's another cost a lot of people don't think about. Qualys, and this is what I was mentioning, Qualys does have a scanner, and you can see, for your medium instance, it costs you 8.7 cents per hour. So a lot of people don't think about it. If, I'm going to spin up this, I'm going to scan it, I'm going to run it all the time. Okay, well, if you run it all the time, you extrapolate that out to a year, it starts to add up. Is that part of your budget? Or do you want to just spin it up, scan something, and spin it back down again? If you go with the high, the CPU1, C1 high, C1 high CPU, it's 13 cents an hour. So it's almost double the price. So the same idea is it's still within your budget. How big of an environment do you need to scan? Do you want to scan a couple boxes and say we're good, or do you want to see all the systems that are out there? And you're still going to have to pay for the scanner license for whatever scanner you're using. So here's a couple examples that I was able to come up with. A lot of people think, oh, I'm up at Amazon, they'll handle everything, they'll patch it. This was a brand new Ubuntu system that I spun up on EC2. It had 10 meg worth of updates right out of the gate. So even though you think, oh, well, this is a brand new instance, that doesn't mean it's updated. So you're still going to have to do SCCM, YUM, whatever your patching system of choice is going to be, you still need to run those patches. Whatever your configuration changes are going to be, that needs to be part of it. You may start to think, you know what? I want to build my own instance. I'm going to put my own instance up on EC2, which is valid. You can do that too. But you want to make sure you're looking at all the configuration changes, the patches, everything. Windows didn't fare so well. This is EC2 as well. 91 meg worth of updates. Are you paying for bandwidth on your cloud? If you're paying for bandwidth, start to tally that up too for how many patches you need to roll out. If you have that on 1,000 servers, that adds up real quick. Yeah. You can, and it runs into the same issues that you would think about with running your scanner and that as well. You're still paying for the processing power. You're still paying for the bandwidth and things like that, whatever your contract says. Right. Yep. Yep, absolutely. So if it's something where you're paying for external bandwidth, then yeah, that would absolutely be my suggestion, is to stand up a WSUS or an SCCM inside your virtual cloud, or however you want to put it, and allow your systems to check in there, because then you will save a lot of money that way. But if you got 1 or 2 servers, it's not necessarily a cost benefit. Like you said, cost benefit would be what you want to look at. So again, this is pretty updated. I mean, the updates that were required for both of these on EC2 were both from just the last month. Not horrible. That's a pretty updated image from Amazon. They do a pretty decent job. Azure you're automatically set to install updates as a default for Windows servers. That's great, right? Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this picture? That's one problem. That's what I saw. Never checked for updates, never installed updates. I agree with you that you never auto-update servers. I'm thinking, when I saw this to begin with, I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And now that you mention it, yeah, that isn't such a good idea. I have seen stuff go down, obviously. But that was my big thing. I saw it say never. I'm like, well, that's not good. So, okay, fine, we'll check for updates. 67 updates available. That's quite a few. That's quite a few more than were on the other one from EC2. When was the last time they refreshed this image? This goes back to, hey, maybe you want to set your own image. Maybe you want to have, anybody here do a refreshed image every month or every quarter? That might be a better way of doing this than, using Amazon's generic image. So I thought, okay, well, let me look at when some of these updates went out. This was done in October. This was a couple days ago. It had patches missing from July of last year. So Azure may not be the best one for the security industry as far as updates and configuration changes. So obviously being, a year and 3 months out, year and 3 months, you might start looking at your image of what you're using for a configuration baseline, things like that. So what are you doing in the cloud? Does anybody here actually use the cloud as part of your current business? What do you do with it? Okay, is that something that you do like testing, or is it your production systems, or? Okay. Somebody else? Cloud backups, okay. So is like redundancy or just storage? Okay. That's one of the things that when I was putting this talk together, I started to think about it. I'm like, okay, well, this is a lot of work. Vulnerability management is not an easy process. Anybody do VM as their daily job? Nobody? Wow. I keep finding this. I seem to be the only one that has a, like, hey, I want to do VM all the time. I never said I wasn't weird. So, understanding what you're doing in the cloud is huge. Knowing the reason why you're using the cloud is huge. A lot of people are going, oh, let's do this in the cloud. Okay, does it make sense? If you're going to be spending the time doing VM in the cloud, does it even make sense to be in the cloud? Is this something, you know what, just stand up a server internally and be done with it? We need 5 servers. Okay, why are we going to the cloud for 5 servers? Go down to Micro Center, grab a couple boxes, throw them on the network, end of story. If you're doing, mining Bitcoin, it might make sense. If you're running your business like Amazon or eBay or somebody like that that needs a lot of capacity because of issues with, bandwidth or peak times or something like that, where they need to spin up an instance that can do something and then spin back down as soon as the load is done, that might make sense. But if you're, using it to test code or something, you're more than likely just better off using a box that you have sitting on, on the network somewhere else. Because you're not going to, it doesn't open you to your exposure to vulnerabilities that you would find in most systems. And you don't have to spend the extra effort doing vulnerability management in a totally separate space and all the considerations that go along with it. So the big thing is that you want to take away from this is, does it really matter? Is this something that I really am concerned about? Are we really considering going to the cloud? So how critical is the cloud to your business program? Is it business continuity where it's, redundancy out there? Is it something where, what, we want to get out of the data center business. We want everything off of our systems. We want to hand this off to somebody and have somebody else do it. Okay, then that's something that you want to start taking into account then. But if it's just going to the cloud because you think it's a buzzword, may not be the best idea. So going back to the talk that I had with this person, last year, I did sit down and I talked to a couple of the people that were working there. I'm like, yeah, we are in Amazon. Yeah, we do use Qualys. We go out and we scan every X days. We find the vulnerabilities and we fix them just like we do for on-prem stuff. So understanding that made me feel a lot better since I use that product. Versus, hey, we don't do this at all and, Amazon handles it. So it made me feel a lot better. But, also getting, your people to understand what the cloud means is a challenge as well. So when you do decide to go to the cloud and you say, yeah, this is a good idea for us, we're going to switch and go to the cloud, what's the best method to do your VM? Anybody have any idea? What's that? So my thought on it is risk-based. So every time you come across a vulnerability, a patch needed, I need to put another firewall in, whatever it may be, you need to think about what does this affect. If it's out in the cloud and it's externally facing, then you're going to have a different risk profile than if your cloud is only connected to the outside world through a VPN from your system. Does that make sense? Anyone? Yeah? Okay. What's that? True. I mean, you really have to think about what you're doing in the cloud is the big takeaway. I mean, if you're using it to play around with, that's one thing. If you're putting customer data out there, it's quite a different profile. So basically, if you have the time and resources to devote to it, and you have the ability to do that risk management on the cloud, it might be a good idea to do it. If not, it may not be. So overall, it's really not that different than on-prem. You're still looking at servers. The cloud isn't some magical, space farm that you can just, put stuff out there and it's automatically protected. You're still going to identify if things are important. You're still going to look at what the risk is to your data, your customer's data, and what your business process is. You still need to scan. You still need to evaluate it. You still need to take into account the cost of doing so. So if you're going to be scanning, you're going to incur costs for your scan. If you're going to be doing evaluation of the vulnerabilities, you incur costs of your security people looking at them. And then at the end of the day, apply risk to it. If this doesn't, it's going to cost me X dollars to fix this, but only X dollars if it gets breached, probably not a big idea, a real important one to fix. Anybody have any questions? We got some time left. Yeah. Okay, so like a shadow IT. So the question was, how would you discover or evaluate the use of the cloud instances as shadow IT, getting around IT? I have run into that in my current job. There unfortunately is a lot of shadow IT, and it's it takes, we have a managed service model, so it takes X amount of time to spin up a server. Right now I think it's like 65 days when they take into account the storage and who needs to be involved to support it and whatever. It takes over 2 months to get a server stood up, and a lot of business units have gone to that model of, hey, we'll just use a cloud instance to do it. They were doing that with Dropbox for a while when we weren't allowing it, so we obviously got DLP involved and things like that. But from a cloud perspective, you really have to understand what your network looks like, where people are connecting to. And if you see a lot of data going out to Amazon, to Azure, things like that, it would definitely be something I would have your security operations center look into. Whoever that may be. If it's you, unfortunately, then you would have to, determine if that's something where, a lot of data is being passed off to Azure, which would account for someone's running some sort of service up there. Then I would try and find out who it's assigned to and what they're doing with it. If it's a valid business process, your business is in business to do business. They're not in business to be a security firm usually. So unfortunately, you're going to end up with, you have to accept some risk of what they want to do. They still send the paychecks to the IT side, for the most part. Some, security companies obviously do security, but I work for an insurance company. Our job is to sell insurance. So if the insurance, the vice president, president of the insurance side says, we are going to do this, figure it out, we have to figure it out. So once we would find something like that, our architects would need to get involved to determine the safest way to do that. Be it, giving us access to scan that instance, which would be one option, or to move it back on in-house and get it set up correctly. Does that answer your question? Yeah. No, I haven't actually. Do you have a link to it or something you can share? No, I haven't seen anything like that. I would definitely be interested to see. The question was, had I seen anything comparing on-prem to cloud and the security vulnerabilities found in each? Unfortunately, no, I haven't. I would love to see something like that because it would be a great way to demonstrate to people that VM is still important. VM is still something you have to do when you go to the cloud. But unfortunately, I have not. From my tests that I've done with spinning up my own instances, I have seen that the cloud seems to be, from an Amazon perspective, a little bit more patched than standing up a regular server and patching everything yourself. But obviously Azure is not quite that far along. So unfortunately, no, I have not. I apologize. Yeah, Wolf? Okay.
So at the GrrCON event last year, there was a company that came out and presented. They do log management and incident response, and they showed the stats between on-prem and in the cloud, and the numbers were pretty close. The majority of the difference being taken into account with technical debt. So when you move into the cloud, you eliminate a lot of the technical debt, and that lowers the risk for a period of time. But of course, if you're not doing ongoing vulnerability management, it goes back up. So if you look at GrrCON last year, you'll see it in the list, and I think the talk was posted as well. Okay. So it's a log management company. They got some great stats on it.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. The question was, have I considered gold images for mitigating some of the issues that VM brings up? Obviously, gold images are awesome if you can keep them up. Working as a consultant for a couple of years, I've noticed that nobody really does a good job with it. Most of the time, their images are at least 6 months out of date. I mean, it's better than, a vanilla load, obviously, but the process of getting that image updated is usually a little bit more difficult, and trying to get them to do it even quarterly was a struggle. I did see one company that did it on a monthly basis. So they were pretty proactive as far as soon as the patches went out, they figured out that, yeah, we can't apply this. They automatically created a new image, and anything past that point went out with the new image, which is great. But your larger enterprises usually have a couple types of images. They'll have 2 or 3 types of desktops for whatever applications they're using, as well as a number of server images. And getting all of those updated is usually a full-time job for at least one person. So if they have the resource allotment for that, then yeah, it's great, because it definitely does help. And a lot of places also don't do hardening either, as like a add-on to that. So your gold image should, in case your patches that have gone out, what your hardened image looks like, so services on and off, ports turned on and off, things like that. And it really doesn't, unfortunately, from what I've seen. It would be a great idea, and it's pie in the sky type thing, but I just haven't seen it in practice. Anybody else? All right, thank you, everybody.